So we had this fantastic opportunity to meet with Anu Vaijanathan. She is here in town in Bangalore to launch her book Anywhere But Home, and we thought we'll just catch up with her and try to hear her side of story in terms of how the journey panned out, from entering into endurance sports to the whole writing of the book.
Sure.
So Anu, before we start this, why don't you give us a little bit of background yourself, and then we take it from there on.
So I was basically a very nerdy child. I loved only my books, and I didn't like exercise at all. And in fact, my PT teacher used to keep telling me that if I moved a little, I wouldn't die or whatever. And she had to really convince me to ever move. And but that being said, our childhood was very idyllic in that Bangalore was a lot less crowded. We had a lot of open space to play in. Every evening, we went out and played hide and seek or 100 other games. We were constantly climbing trees or slapping boys or doing something crazy. And also the way our parents behaved around us was a little different in that they wouldn't think twice about letting a bunch of girls go on a cycle to school. So we biked to school 7 kilometers and biked back. And I think that was the beginning of my engagement with the outdoors. I never liked regimented sport. I was not a basketball player. I was too short. And I used to think that aerobics was the worst thing a woman could do to lose weight. But that being said, I think just the way we sort of grew up sort of laid the foundation for all that was to come, And later in life, I think in college or so, I was in a very stressful engineering program. It was a top 10 engineering school. I was 1 in 5 women in a graduating class of 150. So there was a lot of pressure from a lot of different angles. Both the fact that we were I had no financial aid in that college, so I was under a lot of financial stress. I had to work 20 hours to pay at least a small portion of the bills, not all of the bills.
Sure.
And the engineering program by itself was very difficult. So in order to balance all of this, one of my friends said that if I didn't want to completely burn out in a year, I'd have to run or do something. He didn't say run, but he said you have to do some form of exercise.
Yeah.
And he was a runner and a squash player, so the only thing he would introduce me to was running.
Yeah.
And the first 3-kilometer loop I did, I thought would damn near kill me, right? I was very scared of that. But that didn't happen. And after walking almost 2 of those 3 kilometers, I had a can of Coke or something thrown at me. It was a dead of winter in the US. And I thought, okay, it can't get any worse, right? So I kept running, and that's one thing led to the other. And, there were half marathons, and there were I don't think I've ever done too many standalone marathons, but my sort of base in sport started with running and a lot of cycling in college because we couldn't afford cars.
Okay.
And I moved to Bangalore after quitting my PhD the first time round. I figured that I needed just something to hold on to that felt true to me because my whole life had changed. I had to sort of start a business. I didn't understand the social rules in Bangalore. Moving home was as difficult as moving away from home.
Okay.
So I felt that I couldn't quite fit in with my middle class life. I had everything set for me. Everything was ironed. Everything was cut and chopped. My meals were prepared. But that was not the life I was used to in the US. I was a lot more self-reliant. I had to do all of these chores myself. So when I came home, the only thing that felt somewhat normal was the time that I was running, biking, or swimming. And so I sort of increased that a lot. I gave up all my late nights. I started getting up earlier and earlier. But then, curiously enough, I also realized that in doing that, I started to understand my neighborhoods in a different way. I wasn't engaging with my neighborhood from the seat of an air-conditioned car with my windows rolled up. If you're running outside or you're cycling outside, you tend to see the world a lot differently, and that's what I saw. And as a woman, obviously the level of challenge is 1 degree harder past the first, the roads and the air quality.
Yeah.
And when I saw all that, it was a fun adventure. Luckily for me, I didn't have too many mishaps happen or whatever. But and all the discouragement that I had was inconsequential because the folks that mattered most to me, my closest voices of love, were always positive.
Okay.
My parents never pressurized me to do anything. Not even engineering, so they would never, say anything negative about sport. And so I started, and really the Ironman and triathlon and all that came about only because I wanted to find the hardest thing that I could focus on, and I knew that if I picked an easy goal, once I reached that goal, then I would lose interest. So I picked the hardest goal that I could find, and that was the hardest thing that I could think of, especially training in Bangalore.
Yeah.
And that's it. That was the genesis of my time in sport, I think.
Yeah. Talk us a little bit more, because I want the audience to know in terms of how do you how did you decide to get into that and to dedicate so much of time into training, and then to have an ambition to, as you said, you decided to do something tough.
Yeah.
How did you take up that decision, and how did you train for that?
See, in college, I had been in the company of people that were very fit, right? My friends all swam, biked, and ran. I was dating a triathlete. I was very much in love with this concept of endurance and athletics and things like this. But would I have done a triathlon then? The answer is no. I would not have done it in the US because it seemed a little crazy to me, and I didn't think that I needed to do that. But when I moved home, the reason I picked the sport again is that I'm a very goal-oriented person. It's not that somebody told me you can't do it, because nobody knew that I was training or anything. It's just that I needed my imagination to sort of hinge on something that felt true to me, right? And only a big challenge felt true to who I was. And that was the only reason that I can, and somewhat inarticulately, that's the only reason why I can think of that I picked that sport. Was it tough on the mind and body? Yes, but I didn't do it for suffering. I didn't do it because I wanted to lose weight or I wanted to suffer while I was doing it. I actually was having a lot of fun doing it. I'm a loner. I love being outside on my bike. I love running. I love listening to all the things people say. I love watching all the ladies run and walk in the mornings. Right? These are the things that brought me a lot of joy. There was never any pain, pressure, suffering. Those are not the words I associated with my training. It was welcome for me. It was something that I embraced. That I wanted to be doing. And so when I think about it, I didn't think of it that way, that I would be even more stressed. In fact, it gave me a perfect segue to sort of escape from my realities, which didn't seem so good to me at the time. And today, if you look at endurance sport, of course, I keep saying this again and again, when you contrast it with today, people are sort of running towards something. When they do marathons or 10Ks or 5Ks or triathlons or Ironmans or whatever the case may be, I feel that my perception at least is that we need a community, we need a group to run towards. But I was actually running away from something. So I feel that, and I don't take away anything from the way it is today, because I too have realized as a grown-up, or maybe later as a mother, that community is very important for me. And so when I contrast it that way, I can put things in perspective a little more.
Fantastic. So how did your love for endurance sports, and of course you said you're very goal oriented and you wanted to have a tough goal set for yourself. Triathlon, Ironman itself is a very difficult goal for somebody to take to. I mean, you yourself would have realized that initially. But to go on and take a difficult goal of doing an Ultraman, which is probably 3 times of what anybody would endure in an Ironman, where did that genesis come from, and how did you enjoy that journey in Canada when you did this?
So to be honest, I had moved to New Zealand to get my PhD one more time. I wanted to attempt that again because I loved studying. I don't want to take anything away from the fact that I loved my research, I loved studying, I loved being in that lab. So when I got the second scholarship, I took it. I in fact took it very quickly, and I went to New Zealand. I was training for almost a year and a half or so, when one Easter weekend, I had the worst luck with roommates. I'd been kicked out of one place and the other. And I thought, chalo, my roommates can't stand me, so who else can stand me? I'm not going to any party, so I'm just going to ride my bike. And I took off with a little backpack and my clunky bike, and I basically rode from Christchurch until Nelson, which is at the top of the South Island. It was a 3-day ride and about 450 to 470 kilometers with all the getting lost and everything. I don't quite remember the exact distance, but basically what I remember is that it was 3 days of hard riding. There was a lot of elevation, and because I was crossing the Southern Alps in New Zealand, and I was alone, right? There was not a soul around me. I just had a cell phone in case I got into an accident and I had to call somebody. But that was it. I basically went on that ride because I was so frustrated on Easter weekend. I just wanted to get away by myself. Now, on finishing that ride, I kind of thought to myself that fine, if I can pull this off, then the logical next step in my training or racing should be something longer than an Ironman, because I've done the Ironman before, done plenty of halves. I've seen all the races that I cherished. There were some specific races that I picked, because for the sea or for the open water or for the hills or for the flats, for heat or cold weather, as the case may be, I'd had a good mix of races under my belt, and I thought to myself, fine, what's the logical next step? And then the Ultraman came about because I thought, if I can do this 3-day ride, and I'd also already done 10 kilometers in swimming because I'd been very sick over the December break. I'd had food poisoning, and during that time I really couldn't run too much. So I'd done 2 or 3 sessions in one day, which had totaled to about 8 or 9K. And I thought, I can do the swim, I can do the bike. And running for me is a no-brainer at the time. Not now, but at the time. So I thought, no, I should do it, and I should just go ahead and try.
Fantastic.
And that's what I
Very
did.
good. Fantastic. And just tell us a little bit more about how did this idea of writing this book, your journey came about? Because I believe that, I think there should be more stories, not necessarily from the sporting fraternity, but from the Indian community, and more so from women, that people should write this inspirational story. Talk us a little bit in terms of what was the inspiration and how did this journey pan out?
So basically, when I got pregnant, my physical faculty started to slow down a bit. After the first 3 months, I didn't feel safe biking. I didn't want to bike. I was very uncomfortable, and I also didn't want to run because I didn't feel like I was going very fast, and I just wanted to, every first time mother has different insecurities, and mine were these, right? I just wanted to only swim and walk. And I picked up walking as an endurance sport. So I would walk many hours in the morning, I'd walk many hours in the evening. We were traveling all over the world, so I had the means to do it. If you try to walk in the evening in Bangalore, it's not pleasurable, right? But I had the opportunity and I took it. And walking, as opposed to triathlon training, the thing is that when you're walking, your thoughts are always circling your head. You can't quite get rid of them, as opposed to a hard run or a hard bike ride or a hard swim. And so in that time, I started to think that, look, I've already written everything down in a blog or a journal or somewhere in my diary. Wouldn't it be nice to sort of put everything together? And I wanted to tell the story in a way that I wanted my family to remember me. And this family could include not just my immediate family, but all the friends and my relatives and the extended folks that had, extended circle of people that had come together for me. And so I wrote it with that in mind. But as it turned out, writing is not as easy as I thought. I think I was just being an arrogant PhD, thinking that I can just write, but that was not the case. It was very, very hard, and just putting 10 words together that make sense to anyone outside your own head. That was very difficult for me. And so it was a hard enough goal. Again, I felt very challenged, and I kept at it. And really, the first year and a half after my son came, motherhood pretty much kicked my ass because I have again the same set of circumstances of my work. We are traveling, no grandparents, nothing. So we are negotiating this life as parents now, and so I think because I couldn't do much else, the time he's sleeping or when I have a break from him, the only thing that I could do sustainably was write. And I wrote, and I wrote, and there were many, many, many edits. My editors will tell you happily that there were plenty of edits, and I'm happy that we went through this process, because I really respect writers way more than I did before I started writing, because it's not as easy at all as it looks. And also, to tell the story, my tone was not that of I'm happy to hear you say that there should be more stories that that women put out. But my story was just to sort of describe as simply or as factually as I could what had really happened, and then I left it to the reader to sort of take what they wanted from it.
I think the one take that I'm by the way, I'm still supposed to read the book, but what I like about the book is it's very ordinary. Somebody ordinary as you, your whole background, you didn't have any background in terms of sports, in terms of endurance sports, but you've gone ahead and done that, and then you have penned your journey through that. That to me is a very exciting story, right? So in terms of you have done what you could do in terms of endurance sports, probably something that none of us could even dream about, and then you've also gone and written your journey in a book. So what is next from Anu Vaidyanathan? What can we expect? I know that you are a very goal-oriented person. I'm sure there's something cooking up your sleeve. So what can we expect from it?
To be honest with you, I think I'm a very I live in the present. I try very hard to. I mean, I know I have to plan to a certain degree, but I don't really plan beyond the medium term. At least that's how I feel. I feel that's the best algorithm for parenting, at least, right? Because you can make all the plans in the world, and then your kid may barf, and then that's it. The day's over. So my thing is that for the present moment, I'm very, very dedicated to getting the book out into the world and to getting it to as many people as I can.
Sure.
And talking a little bit about it, because until now I haven't really been very public with what I've done or what I've intended to do, as the case may be, and all that stays. But I think that once the book tour is over and I'm just starting to see a little bit of fitness come back into my life. My pregnancy was very it was a calm time, but what followed was very challenging for me. Structurally my body had changed and I got very injured because like every other obsessive runner, I thought I had to get back very quickly, and I don't think I did right for myself, and so I definitely have a couple of plans for the rest of the year, but I don't know how that'll pan out. First, I have to finish this tour, and then see what I want to do with the writing as well. And as far as the sport is concerned, it's going to stay for the rest of my life. I've always said that. I always say that. But of course, the one outstanding goal every year on year, is that I want to have the perfect hairstyle. So that remains every year. And so wish me luck. Maybe I'll get there this year. So that's the plan.
So you touched, rightly in terms of how the sport, endurance sport specifically, is picking up in India and more so in Bangalore, right? But still there is a large number of people who are probably not even aware about the sport or not even touched by the sport, right? I want to talk to you, or I want you to talk to in terms of specifically women, right? So I see a lot of people get into the sport, they continue to do it, but over a period of time, either because they don't find the time to train for it, or probably they are not goal oriented, that they lose focus and then just leave the sport, right? So your message to such people in terms of how they can make themselves goal oriented and keep that inspiration going from one step to another, and to the regular Indian women, how is that they could follow their dreams in terms of pursuing a sport, and your story kind of signifies that whole essence in terms of how any ordinary woman could do this and inspire a whole lot of people, right?
See, for all women, I think it's true to a degree that we are at more crossroads than men are, right? First, and if you're from a more traditional family, then you see this even more, that first you get married, then you have a baby, then you have another baby, then you're somebody's mom, then you have to take care of that family that you've started. And so for me, as a woman, I feel that it's okay to be in the state of limbo where you feel you never arrive, right? You never quite get there. You're always constantly at the crossroads thinking, should I go this way, should I go that way? And I face it every day in my life too, so I don't take it away from it. But that being said, I think that I've said this in the past, that the day when you don't have these relationships, or as fulfilling and as loving and as wonderful as they may be, the day you don't have these relationships around you, say if you were standing alone somewhere and thinking about, what if I were not someone's wife, what if I were not someone's daughter, what if I were not someone's mom, then who am I? That question is very central to defining how you engage with life. And I think if you did do that mental exercise and you felt that art makes me happy, it makes me happy to paint, or it makes me happy to sing in the bathroom, it makes me happy to sing professionally, it makes me happy to sing to a crowd on a Friday evening in the temple, it makes me happy to run 10 kilometers, it makes me happy to do marathons 3 times a year, whatever the case may be, or triathlons, whatever the case may be. I think that if it is truly dear to you, then you have to protect it as much as you protect your love for your family or your love for your career, or as the case may be. Because I think over time, what I've realized is that our life gives us less and less time to introspect. We don't have time to really sit down and think, what is important, why is it important, how are my priorities shifting, am I taking care of myself? Those things are not very easily done. It's easier said than done, right? And so I think when you know that your life is so crowded, you should take it as a privilege to have that half an hour to yourself, and you should exercise that privilege, because and I'm not it's not a war cry for feminism, it's just a because in my family at least, the men have been as instrumental in our success as the women have been. So I would if I had the bandwidth to actually get this message across, that is what I would want to see, that the whole family comes together, so that mom gets her half an hour, or that dad gets his 20 minutes, or as the case may be. But for women in specific, I think really try to see where your identity finds its highest resonance,
Sure.
its highest pitch.
Sure.
That's music for you, and really embrace it, and don't be ashamed about it.
Yeah.
Don't say, I'm less of a mother if I do this. I'm less of, because look, I have not been separated from my child for the last almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
And in going on this book tour, I thought a lot of times, should I cut it short? Should I come back home? But then I told myself that I have to celebrate the act of writing this book, and this is the only way I can get the word out there.
Yeah.
So it is upon me to sort of put the work out into people's hands. And the fact that I emotionally blackmailed my mom, that's a separate issue. But more seriously, I think I am trying to do this with a sense of lightheartedness. To say that that this time, is rightfully mine, and as long as I'm not harming anyone and my family is happy to take care of my child for a little while,
Why not?
that I should do it.
Absolutely.
And that's how, when I think of goals, that's how I think about it. I think of goals to be really the milestones that make you happy, that bring you joy. What is it that brings you joy? It doesn't have to be to beat the next guy, to run 2 minutes faster, to have the perfect shoes. Those were never my goals, and those are not most people's goals. It's mostly about, I'm having such a stressful day at work, I just want to run half an hour and maybe I'll feel a little better, without the thing in my ears, or all day I've been cooking and taking care of my family. Can I just take 20 minutes and just go out, even if for a walk? I think you should be allowed to do that. First of all, you have to give yourself the permission to do that. So that's how I would put it. And as far as the women that are competitive, or they're doing wonderful stuff as amateurs, I would just tell them to focus on the real stuff, like focus on the training, focus on the hours, focus on the joy you get out of the company of the people that you keep. The rest of it is bullshit. You'll never get there if you're pursuing those things. It's very shallow. And so really go for the goal. Don't baseline it based on somebody on Facebook or somebody's doing this.
Correct.
Somebody bounced back in 2 minutes, and but who cares? It's your life. And so take charge.
Absolutely. All right. So guys, if you want to hear more about her journey in terms of how all this thing transpired, and probably more about this, please make sure that you pick your copy Anywhere But Home, and I think you will get to hear more about her stories. Thank you,
Yes.
Anu, for this lovely
Absolutely. Thanks for
conversation.
having me. Thanks.
Thank you so much.